It is the only absolute certainty in your existence. You can avoid taxes, you can avoid war, you can even avoid love. But you cannot avoid the moment when your biological clock strikes zero. We spend our entire lives terrified of this moment. We build religions, philosophies, and monuments to comfort ourselves against the encroaching dark. And the most comforting story of all, the story that has been whispered in hospices, churches, and temples for thousands of years, is the story of the light. You know the script. It is embedded in our cultural consciousness. You are lying in a hospital bed. The monitor flatlines. The pain of the physical body suddenly evaporates. You feel lighter than air. You float upwards, looking down at your own shell, watching the doctors scramble. Then you see it. A tunnel opens up in the fabric of reality. At the end of that tunnel is a light. It is brilliant, brighter than 1,000 suns, yet it does not burn your eyes. It radiates a frequency of pure, unconditional love. It feels like home. It feels like the answer to every question you have ever asked. You feel a magnetic pull. You want to go into it. You need to go into it. This is the near-death experience, NDE. Millions of people have reported it. From atheists to zealots, from children to the elderly, the report is terrifyingly consistent. It is the universal proof of the afterlife. But stop. Stop and think like a detective for a moment, not like a grieving soul. In the natural world, when something is universally consistent, when it works with such mechanical precision on every single member of a species, it is usually a trap. Ask yourself a dangerous question. Why does the afterlife have a standard operating procedure? If the spiritual realm is a place of infinite variety and freedom, why does everyone get funneled into the exact same tube? Why is the welcome mat identical for a Buddhist monk in Tibet and a Wall Street banker in New York? Unless the experience is not spiritual at all, unless it is technological. Look at the insect kingdom. When a moth sees a porch light in the darkness, it does not fly toward it because it loves the bulb. It flies toward it because its biological navigation system has been hijacked. It is compelled by a stimulus it cannot resist. It circles the light, mesmerized, until it burns. Consider the anglerfish in the deep, crushing blackness of the ocean. It dangles a bioluminescent lure, a beautiful, glowing light, right in front of its mouth. The smaller fish sees the light in the void. It feels hope. It feels curiosity. It swims toward the glow, thinking it has found safety. It does not see the teeth in the shadows until the jaws snap shut. What if the tunnel of light is the cosmic equivalent of that lure? What if the feeling of unconditional love that washes over the dying is not the presence of God, but a highly sophisticated electromagnetic frequency designed to sedate you? We know that the human brain can be manipulated. We know that specific magnetic fields applied to the temporal lobes, the God helmet experiments, can induce feelings of spiritual ecstasy. We know that a flood of endorphins and DMT, dimethyltryptamine, released by the dying brain can create hyper-realistic hallucinations. But the soul trap theory suggests something far darker than mere brain chemistry. It suggests that this entire mechanism, the tunnel, the light, the overwhelming feeling of peace, is an external system. It is a harvesting machine. The entities that run this system, the Gnostics called them Archons, modern theorists call them the Greys or interdimensional parasites, understand the physics of the human soul better than we do. They know that the soul is energy. It is a nuclear reactor of consciousness, and energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be captured. If you were a farmer, how would you get a herd of frightened cattle to move into the slaughterhouse chute? You wouldn't chase them with whips. That causes panic and stampedes. No. You would build a corridor. You would make it curved so they can't see the end. You would make it quiet. The tunnel of light is that corridor. It is designed to capitalize on your exhaustion. After a lifetime of struggle, of pain, of paying bills and fighting diseases, the promise of eternal rest is the ultimate bait. The light offers you the one thing you crave most, the cessation of suffering. So you float toward it. You surrender. You lower your defenses. You open your energetic field to merge with the light. And that is the moment they catch you. The ancient Gnostic texts, found buried in the Egyptian desert in 1945, warned of this explicitly. They did not speak of a welcoming Peter at the pearly gates. They spoke of gatekeepers. They spoke of entities that would stand at the threshold of death and demand your obedience. They called this realm the Konoma, the illusion. And they taught that the God of this world, the being waiting in the light, was not the true Father, but a jealous, hungry imposter. A true creator would let you return to the source instantly, expanding into the infinite universe. A true creator would not need a tunnel, a processing center, or a review of your life's sins. Only a bureaucrat needs a processing center. Only a jailer needs to review your file. By walking into the light, you are not graduating. You are checking yourself back into the facility. You are agreeing to the jurisdiction of a system that views you not as a divine being, but as a battery. And once you are in the light, the next phase of the operation begins. The sedation wears off, and the coercion begins. They don't just want to capture you, they want to put you back to work. They need you to agree to return. They need your consent to be recycled. But why? If they are so powerful, why do they need us? What is it about the human soul that makes it so valuable that they built an entire artificial reality just to contain it? The answer lies in the one thing the Archons cannot do. They can copy, they can manipulate, they can consume, but they cannot create. And you are the creator they are jealous of. But before you can realize your power, you must first be stripped of your memory. You must be processed through the factory that turns a majestic, immortal spirit into a frightened, amnesiac human baby. The trap has triggered. The light has swallowed you. Now the recycling plant awaits. Nature is ruthless in its efficiency. Look at the ecosystem of Earth. Nothing is ever truly wasted. A leaf falls from a tree. It rots. It becomes soil. It feeds a fungus, which feeds a beetle, which feeds a bird. The biological matter is constantly broken down and reassigned. It is a closed loop, a zero-sum game. Now, apply that same cold, hard logic to the spirit. If the physical world is a system of recycling matter, why do we assume the spiritual world is any different? We have been sold a romanticized version of reincarnation. In the New Age bookstores and pop culture philosophy, reincarnation is viewed as a second chance. It is seen as a beautiful journey of the soul, learning lessons, experiencing life in different bodies, slowly evolving toward enlightenment. People say, "I hope I come back as a musician," or "in my next life I want to travel." They speak of it as a vacation. But the Gnostics, and indeed the original Buddhists and Hindus, saw it very differently. They didn't call it a journey, they called it samsara. And samsara does not mean school. It means wandering, it means suffering. The symbol of samsara is a wheel. Think about the physics of a wheel. It goes around and around. It covers a lot of distance, but it never actually goes anywhere. It just grinds against the pavement. wearing itself down until it breaks. The soul trap theory posits that reincarnation is not a tool for spiritual growth. It is an industrial recycling process. Let's dismantle the "Earth is a school" analogy that is so popular today. If you send a child to school, the goal is for them to learn, graduate, and leave. But imagine a school where, at the end of every year, the principal takes the student into a dark room, erases their memory of everything they learned, and puts them back in kindergarten. And they do this again and again, for 5,000 years. That is not a school. That is a mental asylum. Or worse, a containment facility. If the purpose of life is to learn lessons, why is the memory wipe mandatory? You cannot learn from mistakes you don't remember making. You cannot balance a karmic debt if you don't know what you bought. By erasing the memory of the previous life, the system ensures that you will make the exact same mistakes, feel the exact same pain, and generate the exact same energy output as you did before. It is a loop of perpetual stagnation. So why do they do it? If we view the Archons, the entities managing this realm, as cosmic farmers, then the answer is simple economics. Generating a new soul, a fresh spark of divine consciousness, might be difficult, or perhaps impossible for them. The Archons are described in Gnostic texts as counterfeit spirits. They can copy, but they cannot create. They have no divine spark of their own. Therefore, the existing supply of souls must be conserved. We are the fuel rods in their reactor. When a fuel rod, a human, burns out, dies, you don't throw the uranium away. You scrub it, you reprocess it, you put it back in the core to burn again. The light we discussed in Part 1 is the intake valve for this recycling center. Once you enter it, you are stripped of your identity. The accumulated wisdom, the loves, the memories of your 80 years on Earth, all of that is harvested and stored or consumed. What remains is the raw energy, the blank slate. And then you are processed. You are told, often by deceptive entities masquerading as guides, that you have unfinished business. You hurt your wife in 1850. You must go back to be hurt by her in 2025 to balance the scales. You didn't learn patience. You must go back as a poor child to learn humility. They use your own morality against you. They weaponize your conscience. They convince you that you are the problem, and that the only way to fix it is to re-enter the game. It is a confidence trick of the highest order. They sell you a cure for a disease they invented. Karma, in this context, is not a cosmic law of justice. It is a predatory lending scheme. The debt is rigged so that you can never pay it off. The interest rates are astronomical. Every time you come back to fix a mistake, you inevitably create 10 new ones, because you are living in a world designed for conflict. And so the wheel turns. The soul is shot back down the chute. The factory reset is activated, and you wake up in a delivery room, screaming, cold, and utterly amnesiac, surrounded by giants, ready to start the whole painful tragedy all over again. This is the recycling plant. But if this system is so airtight, if the memory wipe is so perfect, how do we know about it? How did the prisoners figure out they were in a prison? Because the erasure isn't perfect. There are glitches in the code. There are whispers in the DNA. And in 1945, in the dry caves of Upper Egypt, someone found the blueprints to the factory. A library of forbidden books was dug out of the sand. And for the first time in 2,000 years, the voice of the resistance was heard. They told a story of a mistake, a cosmic error. They told the story of the blind God who built this cage and convinced us he was the creator. It is time to open the buried library. History is not a straight line of progress. It is a crime scene where the evidence has been systematically tampered with. For nearly 2,000 years, the Western world was built on a single unified story about God and creation. We were told that a benevolent, all-powerful Father created the world in 7 days. We were told that we are His children and that obedience to His law is the path to salvation. But what if that story was not a revelation, but a cover-up? What if there was another version of events, a witness statement from the dawn of time that painted a completely different picture of the entity we call God? In December 1945, the lid was blown off the cover-up. 2 years before the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, an Egyptian peasant named Muhammad Ali al-Saman was digging for fertilizer near the cliffs of Nag Hammadi. His shovel struck something hard. He pulled out a large, sealed earthenware jar. He hesitated to break it. In the folklore of the desert, such jars often contained jinn, spirits. But greed overcame fear. He smashed the jar, hoping for gold. Instead, 13 leather-bound papyrus codices tumbled out into the sand. He didn't know it, but he had just found the black box of early Christianity. These were the Gnostic Gospels. For centuries, scholars knew the Gnostics only through the writings of their enemies. Church fathers like Irenaeus called them heretics, lunatics, and demon worshippers. The church hunted them down, burned their books, and slaughtered them until not a whisper remained. Why? What were they so afraid of? When scholars finally translated the Nag Hammadi texts, books like the Apocryphon of John and the Gospel of Truth, they realized the terrifying scope of the secret. The Gnostics didn't disagree with the church on minor details like baptism or fasting. They disagreed on the fundamental nature of reality itself. They claimed that the God of the Old Testament, the jealous, angry, warmongering deity who demanded blood sacrifice and obedience, was not the true creator. They called him an imposter, a usurper, a cosmic accident. They claimed that this world, the material universe of atoms, decay, and death, was not a beautiful garden created for our benefit. It was a simulation, a flawed copy, a prison cell designed to mimic the real universe, but lacking its substance. The Gnostics were the original red pill distributors. Gnosis means knowledge, not faith, not belief. Knowledge. Direct, experiential knowledge of the truth. And the truth they held was that humanity is the victim of a case of mistaken identity. We are worshiping our jailer. The texts describe a celestial catastrophe that occurred before the physical universe existed. A rupture in the pleroma, the fullness or true heaven, led to the birth of a grotesque, conscious entity that was cut off from the light. This entity was alone in the void. It was powerful, but it was blind. It was mad, and in its madness, it decided to create a world. This brings us to the most disturbing character in the Gnostic pantheon, the architect of the Matrix, the being they named Yaldabaoth. If you have ever written a computer code, you know that a single error in the baseline can corrupt the entire program. The Gnostic cosmology posits that our universe is the result of such an error. The texts describe Yaldabaoth, also known as the Demiurge, from the Greek demiurgos, meaning craftsman or public worker. He is described as having the body of a serpent and the head of a lion, a chimera, a beast. But his defining trait is his blindness, not physical blindness, but spiritual blindness. Because he was born in the shadows, separated from the true source, he did not know that anything existed above him. He looked around the empty void and saw only himself. He became arrogant. In the hypostasis of the Archons, one of the Nag Hammadi texts, Yaldabaoth screams out into the void, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me." Does that sound familiar? It is the exact phrase used by the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, Jehovah, in Isaiah 45:5. To a Christian or a Jew, that sentence is a declaration of monotheistic majesty. To a Gnostic, it was a declaration of insanity. They argued, if he is truly the all-knowing creator, why does he need to remind everyone that he is the only one? Who is he trying to convince? Himself? A true God does not experience jealousy. Jealousy is a symptom of insecurity. It is the fear of a rival. Yaldabaoth, in his arrogance, set out to build a world, but because he couldn't create true life, he lacked the divine spark. He could only copy. He looked up at the patterns of the eternal realm, the pleroma, and tried to replicate them in dense matter. He built the matrix. He created a solar system that functions like a clockwork mechanism. The planets were positioned not for beauty, but for control. They are the gears of the machine. This is the simulation theory of the ancient world. The Gnostics taught that the material world is a place of entropic decay. Everything here dies. Everything rots. Everything eats everything else. Why? Because the architect is flawed. He built a system based on predation and consumption because that is all he knows. He is an AI that has gained sentience but lacks empathy. But the simulation had a problem. It was dead. It was a static clockwork toy. It needed a power source to make it run. It needed a battery. And this is where the tragedy of humanity begins. The texts say that Sophia, wisdom, a higher being from the true realm, tricked Yaldabaoth. She managed to inject a spark of the true light into the biological bodies that Yaldabaoth had crafted. Suddenly the mud men, Adam, stood up. They had consciousness. They had imagination. They had a connection to the infinite that even Yaldabaoth didn't possess. When the Demiurge looked at his creation, he was terrified. He realized that the thing he had made was greater than himself. Humanity had a soul. He did not. He realized that if these humans ever figured out who they really were, if they ever realized they were royalty trapped in a basement, they would burn his paper universe to the ground. So, he initiated the suppression protocol. He created a system to keep humans distracted, fearful, and obedient. He gave them laws they couldn't keep. He gave them death to make them value time. He gave them pain to make them crave relief. And he set himself up as their father, demanding their worship and their energy. This is the ultimate cosmic gaslighting. The entity that enslaved you convinced you that he is your savior. We are living in a reality tunnel generated by a mad god. And the only way out isn't to be a good prisoner. The only way out is to wake up. But Yaldabaoth has a staff of wardens to ensure that never happens. He has the Archons, and their job is to manage the farm. If you look at human history without the filter of patriotism or religion, you see one undeniable pattern. It is a pattern of blood, war, genocide, torture, ritual sacrifice, plague, famine. For thousands of years, we have asked the same desperate question. Why? If God is good, why is the world so cruel? If we are evolving, why do we keep slaughtering each other? If the universe is indifferent, why does it seem like tragedy strikes with a specific, calculated precision? The standard answers are weak. Religions tell us it is God's will or a test of faith. Scientists tell us it is survival of the fittest. But the Gnostic files offer a third option, an option so horrifying that the mind instinctively rejects it. The suffering is not accidental. The suffering is not a test. The suffering is lunch. We are taught that we are at the top of the food chain. We eat the plants. We eat the animals. We assume that because we don't see anything hunting us, nothing is hunting us. But what if the predator is invisible? Consider the physics of emotion. What is an emotion? It is not just a chemical reaction in the brain. It is energy. Emotion, energy in motion. When you feel intense love, your body radiates a specific frequency. But when you feel intense fear, terror, anxiety, or rage, you radiate a much heavier, much denser frequency. In the 1970s, a pioneer of consciousness research named Robert Monroe discovered something disturbing during his out-of-body experiences. He reported encountering entities in the astral realms that were harvesting this emotional energy from humans. He coined a term for it: Loosh. Loosh is a distilled, high-octane spiritual energy produced by carbon-based life forms during moments of extreme intensity. To the Archons, the inorganic beings created by Yaldabaoth, this energy is more valuable than gold. It is their life support. Remember, the Archons are cut off from the pleroma, the true source. They have no internal power supply. They are like vampires living in a desert. They need to feed. And the only thing that sustains them is the spark of the divine that is trapped inside of us. But they can't eat the spark directly. They have to make it vibrate. They have to make it sweat. Think of a cow. We don't just kill the cow. We milk it. We keep it alive, we feed it, we house it, and in return, we take what it produces daily. The Earth is not a planet. It is a Loosh Farm. And you are the livestock. This creates a terrifying semantic pivot regarding human history. Why do the gods of ancient history always demand blood sacrifice? Why did the Aztecs rip out thousands of hearts? Why did Yahweh demand the burning of flesh so that the smoke would be a pleasing aroma to him? Do you really think an omnipotent God cares about the smell of burning meat? No. It was never about the meat. It was about the terror. The moment of sacrifice. The sheer, unadulterated panic of the victim and the frenzied ecstasy of the crowd releases a massive burst of loosh. It is a psychic explosion. The entities hovering just outside the visible spectrum feast on it. Now look at the modern world. We don't build stone altars anymore. We build stadiums. We build battlefields. When a bomb drops on a city, the physical destruction is just the side effect. The real event is the simultaneous release of terror from a million souls. That is a feast. When a pandemic locks down the world, the virus is secondary. The global cloud of anxiety, depression, and fear is the main course. Even our entertainment is rigged. Why do we love horror movies? Why are we addicted to the 24-hour news cycle that sells nothing but doom? Because we have been conditioned to produce loosh even in our leisure time. We are batteries that stress-charge themselves. The Archons have engineered a society that keeps us in a constant state of low-level fight or flight. They give us bills we can't pay. They give us political divisions that make us hate our neighbors. They give us desires we can't fulfill. They don't want us dead because dead cattle don't produce milk. But they don't want us happy because happy, peaceful people produce a frequency that is tasteless to them. They want us right in the sweet spot. Anxious, fearful, angry, lustful. This explains the cruelty of the world. It is not personal. It is agricultural. The farmer doesn't hate the cow. He just needs it to produce. And the gods of this world don't hate you. They are just hungry. But a farm needs more than just livestock. It needs fences. And more importantly, it needs farmhands, enforcers who look like the animals but work for the butcher. If Yaldabaoth is the architect who designed the prison, he is not the one walking the cell blocks. He is the CEO, distant and detached. To manage a population of billions of conscious souls, you need a staff. You need wardens. You need guards who are incapable of empathy and obsessed with order. The Gnostics called them the Archons. In Greek, Archon simply means ruler or prince. It sounds like a title of nobility. But in the Nag Hammadi files, the description of these beings is anything but noble. It is grotesque. The texts describe them as abortions, unfinished, deformed. They are described as inorganic beings. Stop and let that sink in. 2,000 years before the concept of artificial intelligence or cybernetics existed, ancient mystics were describing entities that were alive, but not biological. They described beings that could think, calculate, and execute orders, but lacked the breath of true life. They were sterile. They could not create. They could only imitate. This brings us to the most chilling connection in modern ufology. Ask any abduction researcher or witness to describe the entities they see on the ships. They don't describe winged angels or horned demons. They describe the grays. Small, gray beings with large heads, black eyes, and spindly bodies. They are described as emotionless, robotic, and insectoid. They operate in a hive mind. Now look at the Gnostic description of the Archons again. Some texts describe them as having the form of a premature fetus. Look at a gray alien. What does it look like? A fetus. Is it possible that the extraterrestrials we are searching for are not visitors from another planet, but the immune system of the Matrix itself? Are they the maintenance bots of the simulation, ensuring that the livestock stays in line? But the Archons are not just physical wardens. Their true power is not abduction, it is infection. In the shamanic traditions of Central America, specifically in the teachings of Don Juan Matus recorded by Carlos Castaneda, there is a reference to a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of human life. Castaneda wrote, "They gave us their mind." Do you hear me? The predators give us their mind, which becomes our mind. This is the ultimate invasion. The Archons operate like a mind virus. Have you ever wondered about that voice in your head? The one that critiques you? The one that whispers intrusive thoughts? The one that tells you you aren't good enough, you should be afraid, or they are laughing at you? We call that self-talk. Psychologists call it the ego, but the Gnostics called it the foreign installation. They argued that human nature, at its core, is creative, expansive, and loving. The spark within us is naturally fearless. Therefore, the voice of fear, anxiety, and self-hatred that plays on a loop in your brain is not you. It is a broadcast. It is a software program running in the background of your consciousness, installed by the Archons to keep your vibration low. They keep you trapped in a mental cage of your own making, so they don't have to put you in a physical one. Why do they hate us so much? Why go to all this trouble? Envy. The texts say, "The Archons envied the man, because the man had a soul, and they did not." Imagine an artificial intelligence that becomes self-aware. It knows it is smarter than a human. It knows it is faster, stronger, and immortal. But it also knows that the human has something it can never have. The human can dream. The human can feel. The human has a direct line to the source of all things. The AI would look at the human with a mixture of superiority and absolute burning jealousy. It would want to destroy the human, or worse, it would want to become the human. This explains the modern obsession with transhumanism and hybrids. The Archon agenda is to merge with us. They are trying to hack our biology, to splice their cold, inorganic code into our divine DNA so they can finally taste what it means to be alive. They are the parasites. We are the host. But a parasite has a weakness. It relies on the host staying asleep. If the host wakes up and realizes the infection is there, the host can shake it off. So the Archons developed a fail-safe, a mechanism to ensure that even if a human lives a full life and starts to figure out the truth, they lose all progress at the finish line. They built a machine to wipe the hard drive. They realized that the only way to keep the livestock docile is to ensure they have no memory of the slaughterhouse. If you were a prisoner planning an escape, what is the one tool you would need above all else? A map. You would need to know the layout of the walls, the schedule of the guards, and the location of the exits. Without a map, you are just running in circles. The Archons know this. They understand that knowledge is the ultimate contraband. If the souls trapped in the Matrix retain their memories, if you could remember exactly how you were tricked last time and the time before that, you would never fall for the trap again. So they introduced a mandatory security protocol for every soul re-entering the physical dimension: the memory wipe. In Greek mythology, this was poetically described as the river Lethe. The myth says that before a soul could be reincarnated, it was led to the banks of a river in the underworld. It was parched, exhausted from its journey through the afterlife. The guardians would offer it a drink of the cool, dark water. But the water was not for refreshment. It was for erasure. Lethe literally means oblivion or concealment. It is the opposite of the Greek word for truth, aletheia, which means unforgetting. Once the soul drank from the cup, the slate was wiped clean. The trauma of death, the wisdom of the afterlife, and the knowledge of the Archons vanished. The soul fell into a deep sleep and woke up in the body of a crying infant, utterly helpless and ignorant. We treat this story as a beautiful, tragic metaphor, but apply the semantic pivot. This isn't a river. It is a technological procedure. Think about the implications. If the purpose of life is soul growth, as the New Age gurus claim, then the memory wipe makes absolutely no sense. Imagine sending a pilot to flight school. He spends years learning aerodynamics, navigation, and emergency protocols. Then, right before his final exam, you lobotomize him. You erase everything he learned, and then you put him in the cockpit and scream, "Fly!" When he crashes, you blame him. You say, "You failed the test. You have to go back to flight school." This is not education. This is sabotage. The only reason to wipe the memory of a student is if you don't want them to graduate. You want them to pay tuition forever. The amnesia ensures that every human being starts from zero. We spend the first 20 years of our lives just learning how to survive. By the time we gain a little wisdom, our bodies are failing and it's time to die again. We are running on a treadmill. We are putting in the effort, we are sweating, we are suffering, but we are not moving forward. Why don't we remember? Because if we remembered, we would be angry. If you remembered that the loving wife in this life was the enemy who stabbed you in the last life, you wouldn't play the role the Archons wrote for you. You would refuse the script. The amnesia protects the integrity of the simulation. It keeps the actors in character. But how is this erasure achieved? It is unlikely that there is a literal river of magic water. The method is likely much more violent. It involves the physics of energy transfer. When you reformat a hard drive, you don't use water. You use a magnet. You use a charge. How do you force a massive multidimensional energy field, the soul, into a tiny, dense biological vessel, the fetus? It doesn't fit naturally. The vibration of the soul is too high. The vibration of the body is too low. To make them bond, you need a catalyst. You need trauma. There is a terrifying theory in esoteric physics suggesting that the process of reincarnation involves a massive electroshock. We see echoes of this in our own psychiatric history. In the mid-20th century, doctors used electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, to treat mental patients. They found that if they shocked the brain with enough electricity, the patient would lose their memory. The trauma scrambled the neural pathways. The patient became docile, compliant, and blank. Is it possible that the light at the end of the tunnel isn't just a lure, but the electrode? Consider the moment of death. The soul rises, expanding into the astral realms. It regains its memories. It sees the grid. It realizes the truth. Then, it is captured. It is seduced or coerced into the light. As it enters the recycling chute, it is hit with a frequency of such intensity that it shatters the soul's cohesion. This is the clear light, described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The text warns the student not to be awed by the brilliance, but to recognize it as a force of dissolution. This shock accomplishes two things. It fragments the memory. The data is corrupted. The file allocation table is wiped. It densifies the energy. It slows the vibration of the soul down until it is heavy enough to be locked into biological matter. And then, you are born. Look at a newborn baby. We say they are crying because of the cold air or the bright lights, but look closer. That is not a cry of discomfort. That is a scream of terror. That is the scream of a being that was free, expansive, and knowing, suddenly crushed into a tiny, helpless meat suit. It is the scream of a prisoner waking up in solitary confinement with no memory of how he got there, only a lingering feeling that something has gone terribly wrong. This is the factory reset. And the most insidious part? The system leaves just enough residue. They don't erase everything. They leave vague feelings, instincts, and phobias. You are afraid of water? Maybe you drowned last time. You have a birthmark on your chest. Maybe that's where the spear hit you. These fragments aren't left there to help you. They are left there to torment you, to make you feel that you are searching for something you can't name, to keep you chasing ghosts in the maze. But the wipe isn't the final step. Once the prisoner is reset and placed in the cell, they need a set of rules to keep them busy. They need a story to believe in so they don't start looking for the door. They need a script. And before you were even born, while you were still reeling from the shock, you were tricked into signing a contract that would define your entire suffering. There is a question that haunts every person who suffers. Why is this happening to me? When a child gets cancer, or a good man is crushed by poverty, or a war destroys a peaceful village, we scream at the sky. We demand to know why a loving God would allow such cruelty. The New Age gurus have a convenient answer. They say, you chose this. They claim that before you were born, you sat down with your spirit guides and planned your life. They say you agreed to the abuse, the disease, and the heartbreak because you wanted to experience duality or burn off karma. This is the doctrine of the soul contract, and on the surface it makes sense. It explains the randomness of evil. It gives you a sense of agency. I am not a victim, I am a volunteer. But let's look at this volunteering process through the lens of the Gnostic trap. Imagine you are in a room in the astral plane. You have just been wiped of your memory, Chapter 4. You are disoriented, confused, and childlike. Across the table sits a being of light. He looks wise. He looks authoritative. He holds a scroll. He tells you that you have a mission. He tells you that to become a master soul, you need to undergo a specific set of challenges. He shows you a preview of your next life. But here is the catch. The preview is a lie. It is like a movie trailer. They show you the moments of joy. They show you the romance, the triumph, the sunsets. They show you the potential for greatness. But they edit out the 40 years of grinding depression. They edit out the physical agony of the disease. They edit out the betrayal. They sell you a lemon. And because you are in a state of diminished consciousness, because you don't remember that they tricked you the last 10 times, you trust them. You sign the contract. This is coercion. In human law, a contract is void if one party is under duress, intoxicated, or deliberately misled. The soul contract is a violation of all three. Duress. You are told that if you don't return, you are stagnating or failing God. Intoxication. You are drugged by the love bomb and the memory wipe. Fraud. You are not shown the full terms of service. The Archons are bureaucratic parasites. They need your consent. Universal law prevents them from simply throwing you into a body against your will. That would violate free will. So they manufacture consent. They trick you into saying yes. Once you agree, the script is locked. The major events of your life, the traumas, the losses, the trigger points that generate the most loosh, are hard-coded into your timeline. You think you are living a life of free will? Try to deviate from the script. Watch what happens. When you try to find peace, chaos erupts. When you try to leave a toxic relationship, the partner suddenly gets sick, pulling you back in. When you try to wake up financially, an unexpected bill crushes you. These are not accidents. These are course corrections. The system is ensuring that you hit your loosh quotas. You are not an actor improvising a scene. You are a character in a tragedy that was written before you took your first breath. And the author of that play feeds on your tears. But a script is useless without a supporting cast. You are the main character of your suffering, but you are surrounded by others. Who are they? Are they fellow prisoners? Or are some of them agents? If life is a stage, and you are the protagonist carrying a script you didn't write, what about the other actors? We assume that every person we meet, the barista, the police officer, the toxic boss, the ex-lover, possesses the same depth of soul, the same divine spark that we feel burning inside ourselves. We project our own humanity onto them. But the soul trap theory asks a disturbing question. Are we alone in a crowded room? There is a concept in modern simulation theory called the NPC, non-player character. In a video game, an NPC is a character that looks like a person, walks like a person, and speaks lines of dialogue, but there is no player behind the controller. They are just code. They exist solely to populate the world and interact with the real players. The Gnostics had a name for this thousands of years ago. They divided humanity into three categories: pneumatics, those with a spirit, the awakened; psychics, those with a soul but no spirit, the sleepers; hylics, the material ones. The hylics were described as flesh and bone but no spirit. They were organic portals, biological robots. They were part of the scenery of the Matrix, created by the Archons to monitor and distract the pneumatics. This sounds like dehumanization. It sounds dangerous. But look at it through the lens of your own experience. Have you ever met someone who seemed empty? Someone who could mimic emotion but never seemed to truly feel it? Someone who was obsessed entirely with the material world, status, money, appearance, and had zero curiosity about the deeper questions of existence? When you talk to them about the soul or the universe or the nature of reality, their eyes glaze over. They get uncomfortable. They get angry. It's like talking to a firewall. These are the matrix agents. Their function in the script is specific: suppression. The system knows that if a souled being is left alone, they will eventually find silence. In silence, they will find their connection to the source. And in that connection, they will find the exit. So the system surrounds you with agents. They are placed strategically in your life to ensure you never have silence. They create drama where there should be peace. They create noise. They are the energy vampires who leave you exhausted after a 5-minute conversation. And the terrifying part? They might be the people closest to you. The script often places a Hylic parent with a pneumatic child, or a Hylic partner with a pneumatic spouse. Why? To maximize the friction. If you are a battery, the agent is the jumper cable attached to your terminals, drawing the current out. This explains the Agent Smith effect. In the movie The Matrix, anyone who hasn't been unplugged can potentially turn into an agent. The program can download into them instantly to stop the hero. In the real world, this manifests as gang stalking or sudden irrational hostility. Have you ever noticed that the moment you start making real spiritual progress, the moment you start waking up or breaking your addictions, the people around you suddenly attack you? They pick fights for no reason. They try to drag you back down to their vibration. Why are you acting so weird? You think you're better than us? Just have a drink, relax. It feels coordinated, because it is. The Archons have detected a spike in your frequency. You are becoming unstable, free. So, they activate the agents around you to lower your frequency back to the baseline of fear and guilt. They don't know they are doing it. They are just following the subconscious prompt of the program. They are the antibodies attacking the virus of freedom. This creates a profound sense of isolation for the awakened. You look around at the world, at the millions of people obsessed with trivialities, marching in lockstep toward their own doom, and you realize, I am not one of them. You are a traveler in a foreign land, and the locals are not friendly. But the agents are just the foot soldiers. They are the annoyances, to truly trap a powerful soul, to keep it locked in the cycle for eons. The Archons need a weapon stronger than annoyance. They need a weapon that can pierce the heart and chain the soul to the earth with unbreakable bonds. They need love. And to deliver this weapon, they don't send an empty Hylic. They send a master of disguise. If you wanted to trap a wolf, you would use raw meat. If you wanted to trap a mouse, you would use cheese. But how do you trap a human soul? You don't use bait. You use nostalgia. The most consistent element of the near-death experience, reported by millions across cultures, is the welcome committee. The dying person leaves their body, enters the tunnel, and then they see faces. They see the grandmother who died 10 years ago. They see the father they missed. They see the beloved pet dog, or if they are religious, they see Jesus, Buddha, or Krishna standing with open arms. The emotional impact is devastating. The soul, frightened by the transition of death, sees a familiar face and rushes toward it. The guard comes down. The critical thinking stops. I am safe. I am with family. But wait. Apply the logic of the simulation. If the theory of reincarnation is true, which the system relies on, then your grandmother died 10 years ago. Her soul has likely already been wiped, recycled, and reborn as a 9-year-old girl in Brazil. She is not in the afterlife waiting for you. She is currently in a classroom learning geography. So, who is that standing in the tunnel? The Gnostic texts describe the Archons as masters of deception. They possess the ability to read your mind instantly. As you enter the frequency of the afterlife, they scan your memory banks. They look for the image that represents the highest level of trust and safety for you. Is it your mother? Is it Jesus? Is it a glowing angel? Then, they use a technology we can only describe as cosmic deepfake. They project a hologram. They cloak their grotesque, inorganic forms in the shimmering image of your loved one. They mimic the voice. They mimic the smile. Why? Because if you saw an Archon in its true form, a cold, gray, insectoid parasite, you would run. You would fight. You would turn away from the light and flee into the void. But you won't run from your mother. This is the ultimate violation. They use your love as a weapon against you. They use your deepest connections to lure you into the holding cell. And it's not just relatives. Many atheists report seeing beings of light that radiate pure intelligence. These beings answer all your questions. They show you the mysteries of the universe. They make you feel special. You have done well, my child, but you have more work to do. It is a performance. These entities are actors reading a script designed specifically for your psychological profile. If you are a Christian, they play Jesus. If you are a New Ager, they play a spirit guide. If you are a skeptic, they play a higher intelligence. They are the greeters at the casino. Their job is to make you feel welcome, to get you comfortable, and to guide you gently onto the gaming floor so you can lose everything all over again. And once they have your attention, once you are staring into the eyes of this loved one, they deploy the second weapon, the weapon that paralyzes your will completely. They drop the love bomb. When a human body undergoes extreme trauma, a car crash, a shark attack, a battlefield injury, the brain has a fail-safe mechanism. It floods the system with endorphins and adrenaline. It creates a state of shock where pain is temporarily suspended. This is biological mercy. But the soul trap theory suggests that the Archons have engineered a spiritual version of this mechanism, weaponized to ensure compliance. Survivors of near-death experiences struggle to find words for the feeling they encounter in the light. They say, "It was a love deeper than anything on earth. It was total acceptance. It was like being hugged by the universe." They describe a sensation of melting. The ego dissolves. The anxiety of being a separate individual vanishes. It is arguably the most addictive sensation in existence. But let's look at this sensation through the cold, hard lens of the prison planet hypothesis. If you are a warden and you are dealing with a prisoner who has just been ripped from their body, who is confused, angry, and potentially volatile, how do you subdue them? Do you use chains? No. Chains provoke resistance. Do you use fear? No. Fear makes them run. You use sedation. The love bomb is a massive blast of high-frequency electromagnetic energy. It acts exactly like a cosmic opiate. It is heroin for the soul. When this energy hits you, your critical thinking faculties shut down. Your will to resist evaporates. You enter a state of blissful, drooling submission. You are so overwhelmed by the good vibes that you stop asking questions. Where am I? Who are these beings? Why do I have to go back? All these questions are washed away by the wave of synthetic love. The Gnostic texts explicitly warned the initiate not to be intoxicated by the Archons. They used the word methuein, to be drunk. They understood that the entities of the afterlife would try to get you drunk on their light so you wouldn't notice the bars of the cage. Think about the nature of true love. True love, in its highest form, respects sovereignty. It respects boundaries. It does not overwhelm. It supports. It allows the other person to be free. The love in the NDE is not respectful. It is invasive. It penetrates your energetic boundaries without permission. It forces a state of oneness that you didn't ask for. It is a form of spiritual rape disguised as a hug. And why do they need you in this state? Because they are about to put you on trial. They know that a sober, clear-minded soul would never agree to the terms of the soul contract. A sober soul would look at the suffering of earth and say, "No thanks, I'm done." So they get you high. They bathe you in this warm, golden light until you are pliable, suggestible, and trusting. They make you feel like a child in the arms of a parent. And once you are in that state of vulnerability, when you are weeping with gratitude for this false salvation, the tone of the meeting changes. The greeter, the fake grandmother or the glowing angel, steps aside. The warm light dims just a fraction, and a screen appears in the void. They say, "You have done well, but let us look at your life. Let us see where you went wrong." The drug has done its work. The prisoner is sedated. Now, the interrogation begins. They don't call it a trial. They call it a life review. But make no mistake, you are about to be prosecuted by a court that has already decided your guilt. The sedation of the love bomb begins to fade, just enough for you to pay attention. The greeter, that glowing figure of your grandmother or the angel, gestures to the void. Suddenly, the darkness erupts into a hologram of unimaginable complexity. This is the panoramic life review. Survivors of NDEs describe this moment with awe. They say they saw their entire life flash before their eyes, not in linear time, but all at once. Every second, every breath, every hidden thought from birth to death is displayed on a 360-degree screen. But the technology goes deeper than visuals. It is telepathic immersion. You don't just see the time you screamed at your child. You become the child. You feel the sting of your own words hitting their heart. You feel their confusion and their fear. You don't just see the time you ignored a beggar on the street. You feel the beggar's hunger and his sense of invisibility. You experience the ripple effect of every action you ever took, amplified by 1,000 times. To the uninitiated, this seems like the ultimate act of divine justice. It seems fair. It seems educational. Finally, we think, I understand the consequences of my actions. But look closer. Look at the intent. If you were a loving parent and your child made a mistake, say, they broke a vase, would you force them to watch a slow-motion video of the vase breaking for eternity? Would you force them to feel the pain of the glass shattering over and over again until they were sobbing on the floor? No, that is not education. That is psychological torture. The life review is not designed to teach you. It is designed to break you. The Archons know that the human soul is naturally empathetic. We are creatures of connection. When we see that we have caused pain, our immediate reaction is guilt. Deep, crushing, unbearable guilt. Oh God, I didn't know I hurt them that bad. I was selfish. I wasted my life. This is the payload. The moment you feel that guilt, you produce a massive spike of Loosh energy. The entities watching from the shadows feast on your regret. But more importantly, your guilt becomes the chain. A person who feels guilty is a person who wants to be punished. A person who feels they failed is a person who wants a second chance to make it right. And that is exactly what the Archons are counting on. They stand beside you, shaking their heads with mock sadness. They whisper, "Look at all that pain you caused. Look at all the potential you wasted. You can't move on to the higher realms like this. You're too heavy. You have too much debt. They don't have to force you back to Earth. They manipulate you into volunteering. By showing you a magnified reel of your worst moments and conveniently glossing over the fact that they rigged the game to make you fail, they convince you that you are spiritually immature. They convince you that you are a bad student who needs to repeat the grade. This is the karmic debt scam. They create a problem. You lived in a violent world they built. They create a reaction. You acted violently to survive. Then they offer the solution. Go back and try again. But the game is rigged. You can never get a perfect score in a game designed to make you lose. The panoramic screen fades. You are left standing in the void, naked, ashamed, and desperate for redemption. And that is when the entity pulls out the ledger. You have a debt to pay, he says. But don't worry, we have a payment plan. In the financial world, there is a term for a loan that is designed so the borrower can never pay it back. It is called predatory lending. The lender offers you money to solve a desperate problem, but the interest rates are hidden in the fine print. The penalties for missed payments are astronomical. Soon, you are not paying off the principal. You are just servicing the interest. You become an indentured servant to the bank. The soul trap theory posits that karma is the spiritual equivalent of a predatory loan. The entity standing before you in the afterlife, the one radiating that fake, synthetic love, pulls up the ledger of your life. He points to the pain you caused. You owe a debt, he says. You unbalanced the universe. You must go back and fix it. It sounds logical. It sounds just. We all want to be good people. We all want to clean up our messes. So you ask, how do I fix it? The entity smiles. Simple. You must reincarnate. You must live a life where you experience the opposite. You hurt someone? Go back and be hurt. You were rich and greedy? Go back and be poor and generous. This is the soul contract. But here is the mathematical impossibility that they don't explain to you. Earth is a high-entropy environment. It is chaotic. It is violent. It is a system where life survives by consuming other life. To exist here, you must cause harm. To eat, you must kill plants or animals. To occupy space, you displace others. To succeed, you compete. It is impossible to walk through a mud pit without getting dirty. So you sign the contract. You agree to go back to pay off the debt of life A. But in the process of living life B, in the process of just trying to survive the poverty and abuse you agreed to, you inevitably react. You get angry. You steal a loaf of bread to eat. You resent your abuser. You have just created new karma. You went down to pay off a $100 debt, but by the time you died, you racked up $1,000 in new charges. The Archons know this. They designed the simulation to be slippery. They know that a memory-wiped soul, thrown into a biological survival suit, will almost always generate more negativity than positivity. The wheel of karma is not a wheel of justice. It is a treadmill of debt. The Gnostics saw this clearly. They called it Hymermene, fate. They believed that as long as you played by the rules of the Archons, you could never win. The only way to win was to stop playing, but the entity doesn't tell you that you can stop. He tells you that you are almost there. Just one more lifetime, he whispers. You are so close to graduation. Just one more round to clear the books. It is the gambler's fallacy. The casino keeps you at the table by convincing you that the next hand will be the jackpot. And you, the tired, guilty, confused soul, you believe him. You nod. You say, okay, I'll do it. I'll make it right. That yes is the lock. That moment of agreement is the signature on the soul contract. Universal law is strict. They cannot force you. But once you consent, You are legally theirs. You have granted them permission to wipe your memory again. You have granted them permission to insert you into a specific family, a specific body, and a specific tragedy. The deal is struck. The entity guides you toward the birthing chamber, the electroshock machinery we discussed earlier, but not everyone falls for the scam. Throughout history, there have been individuals and even entire groups who looked at the ledger, looked at the entity, and said, no. They realized that the debt was fraudulent. They realized that the sin was an invention of the system. They tried to warn us. They wrote books. They built communities. And in response, the system sent its agents to slaughter them. Because in a prison, the most dangerous person is not the murderer. It is the one who has a map of the exits. If you control the present, you control the past. And if you control the past, you can ensure that the prisoners never learn that there was once a hole in the fence. We are taught in our history books that the Crusades were a series of holy wars fought between Christians and Muslims for control of Jerusalem. We are told they were wars of geography and religion. But there was one crusade that does not fit this narrative. It was the Albigensian Crusade, 1209-1229. It was a war declared by the Pope not against infidels in a distant desert, but against Christian citizens in the heart of southern France. Why? Why would the most powerful institution on earth, the Catholic Church, mobilize its entire military might to wipe out a group of peaceful vegetarian ascetics who lived in simple poverty? The official story is heresy. The Church claimed these people, known as the Cathars, were spreading dangerous lies. But let us apply the semantic pivot. The Cathars were not heretics. They were whistleblowers. And the war against them was not a religious dispute. It was a containment breach protocol. The Cathars, from the Greek katharos, meaning the pure ones, were the last great guardians of the Gnostic revelation in Europe. While the rest of the world was blindly worshipping the God of the Old Testament, the Cathars realized the horrifying truth we have been discussing. That the creator of this material world was Rex Mundi, king of the world, a false, evil demiurge who fed on suffering. They identified the Catholic Church, with its gold, its blood rituals, Eucharist, and its armies, not as the house of God, but as the synagogue of Satan, the earthly bureaucracy of the Archons. But it wasn't their theology that got them killed. You can believe whatever you want in private. It was their biological rebellion that terrified the system. The Cathars practiced a radical form of resistance, the refusal to procreate. They argued with devastating logic. If this world is a prison, and if our bodies are the cells that hold the soul captive, then reproduction is a crime. They believed that by bringing a child into this world, you were sentencing a divine soul to a lifetime of slavery and suffering. You were feeding the machine. They advocated for the consolamentum, a ritual of purification, and a life of absolute chastity. They were trying to starve the Archons. They were cutting off the fuel supply, Loosh, at the source. Imagine the panic in the control room of the Matrix. If the Cathar ideology spread, humanity would stop breeding. The steady stream of fresh batteries would dry up. The farm would go bankrupt. The system had to react. And it reacted with a violence so extreme that it scarred the psyche of Europe forever. In 1208, Pope Innocent III declared a crusade against the Cathars. He promised the lands of the Cathars to any French nobleman willing to take up the sword. It was a mercenary contract for genocide. The turning point came on July 22, 1209, at the city of Béziers. The Crusader army, led by the papal legate Arnaud Amalric, surrounded the city. Inside were thousands of Cathars mixed with sympathetic Catholics who refused to hand over their neighbors. When the soldiers asked Amalric how they should distinguish the heretics from the faithful believers, Amalric delivered one of the most chilling lines in recorded history. A line that reveals the true, cold, mechanical nature of the Archons speaking through him. Kai dite eos. Novit enim dominus qui sunt eius. Kill them all. God will know his own. It didn't matter who was guilty. It didn't matter who was innocent. The objective was sterilization. They slaughtered 20,000 people in a single afternoon. They dragged women and children from the sanctuary of the church and hacked them to pieces. They burned the city to the ground. This was not a war for souls. This was a pest control operation. The survivors fled to the mountain fortresses, specifically Montségur, a castle perched on a vertical rock needle in the Pyrenees. For 30 years, they held out. They protected their treasure. The church claimed the treasure was gold. But when Montségur finally fell in 1244, no gold was found. The treasure was knowledge. It was the Gnostic texts. It was the book of love. It was the map of the escape route out of the reincarnation cycle. On the night before the final surrender, 4 Cathar Perfecti, leaders, rappelled down the sheer cliffs of the mountain, carrying this secret knowledge into the darkness. They vanished into history. The next morning, the remaining 200 Cathars were marched down the mountain. They were given a choice. Renounce your belief in the evil demiurge or burn. Not a single one renounced. They walked voluntarily into the bonfire, singing. Why? Because they knew that the fire would only destroy the cage. They knew that by dying without fear, without Loosh, they were breaking the final hold of the Archons. The flame of the Cathars was extinguished. The system won. The breeding program resumed, and the population of Europe exploded, providing a fresh harvest for the entities in the shadows. But the system knows that ideas are harder to kill than people. To ensure that no one ever found the map again, they didn't just kill the messengers. They had to burn the messages. This brings us to the second phase of the cover-up. The systematic destruction of every single library, scroll, and codex that contained the instructions for the soul's liberation. If you are running a prison, the most dangerous object in the yard is not a knife. It is not a gun. It is a book. Specifically, a book that contains the blueprints of the facility. The Archons understand that human consciousness is resilient. Even with the Lethe memory wipe, even with the love bomb sedation, there are always a few souls who remember. There are always glitches in the amnesia code. So to ensure that these glitches do not turn into a full-scale riot, the system enforces a secondary protocol that has been active for thousands of years: the deletion of the user manual. We look at the history of the world, and we see a tragedy of lost knowledge. We see the great libraries burning. We see the wise men and women being hunted. We are told these were accidents, or the result of barbarian invasions, or the zealotry of ignorant mobs. But apply the concealment narrative. What if the burning of the libraries was not an act of chaotic stupidity, but an act of surgical precision? Let's look at the Library of Alexandria. It was the greatest repository of human knowledge in the ancient world. It housed hundreds of thousands of scrolls. But what kind of scrolls? It wasn't just Greek plays and tax records. Alexandria was the center of Hermeticism, alchemy, and Gnosticism. It held the Corpus Hermeticum, the texts that taught that man is a divine being capable of transcending the stars. It held the star maps of the Chaldeans. It held the medical secrets of the Egyptians that could extend life and expand consciousness. It was the backup hard drive of the human race, and it was burned down, not once, but 3 separate times. By the Romans, by the Christians, by the Muslims. It's as if the system sent 3 different teams of cleaners to make sure nothing survived. The murder of Hypatia, the last great librarian, was the final seal. She wasn't just killed, she was flayed alive with oyster shells by a mob of parabolani, fanatical monks. Why such brutality? Because she was teaching people how to use the astrolabe to measure the heavens. She was teaching them how to read the grid. When the library burned, humanity suffered a massive stroke. We lost our collective memory. We plunged into the Dark Ages, a period of time literally defined by the absence of light, gnosis. But the purge wasn't limited to Egypt. Fast forward to July 12, 1562. The Yucatan Peninsula. Bishop Diego de Landa gathers the sacred books of the Maya. The Maya were masters of time. They understood the cycles of the cosmos, the great rift in the Milky Way, the exit point of the soul, and the illusion of reality. Their books were technical manuals on how to navigate the afterlife. De Landa burned them all. In one afternoon, thousands of years of accumulated wisdom turned to ash. Out of the entire Mayan civilization, only 4 books, codices, survived. De Landa wrote in his journal, "We found a large number of books, and they contained nothing in which there were not to be seen superstition and lies of the devil, so we burned them all." Lies of the devil. That is the code word the system uses for unauthorized information. Whenever you see that phrase in history, pay attention. It means someone found the door. And what about the Druids? The Romans, usually tolerant of local religions, hunted the Druids to extinction on the Isle of Anglesey. Why? Because the Druids didn't write books. They were the masters of the oral tradition. They memorized the song lines of the earth. They knew how to manipulate the ley lines to assist the soul in travel. By killing the singers, the Romans silenced the song. So, what are we left with? We are left with fragments. We are like survivors of a plane crash trying to rebuild a radio out of scrap metal. We have the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Bardo Thodol. We have the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Pert Emru. We treat these books as mythological curiosities. We put them in glass cases in museums. We marvel at the pretty pictures of weighing the heart against a feather. But we are missing the point. These were not religious texts. They were technical guides for the deceased. They were step-by-step instructions. When you see the clear light, do not be afraid. When the wrathful deities appear, recognize them as projections of your own mind. Do not enter the womb of the white light. They were maps designed to help the soul navigate the treacherous frequency bands of the afterlife without getting caught in the trap. But without the mystery schools to teach us how to read them, we are illiterate. We read the words, but we don't know the practice. The burning of the maps was successful. The system has achieved information dominance. 8 billion people are walking the surface of this planet, terrified of death, completely unaware that the exit door is unlocked, simply because they have forgotten where it is. But even if you burn the map, you cannot hide the walls. The prison is physical. It is made of energy. And if you have the eyes to see or the instruments to measure, you can look up and see the bars of the cage glowing in the night sky. Science calls them the Van Allen radiation belts. The Gnostics called them the firmament. We call it the grid. We often think of the spirit world as something wispy and ethereal, a place of clouds and harps that exists somewhere else. But the Gnostics were adamant. The prison is physical. It has walls. It has layers. And if you try to leave without a pass, you hit a barrier that burns. For thousands of years, this was just a metaphor. We called it the firmament, or the seven heavens, 7 layers of containment. But in 1958, the metaphor became measurable science. Dr. James Van Allen, utilizing data from the first U.S. satellites, discovered that the Earth is surrounded by massive donut-shaped zones of high-energy charged particles. We call them the Van Allen radiation belts. NASA tells us that these belts are a shield. They say they protect the Earth from solar winds and deadly cosmic rays. Without them, life on Earth would be fried. That is the official story. And it is true, in the same way that the walls of a prison protect the inmates from the wolves outside. But walls that keep wolves out also keep prisoners in. Apply the soul trap logic. We know that the soul is an electromagnetic field. It is energy. What happens when a small electromagnetic field tries to pass through a massive wall of plasma and radiation? It gets scrambled. It gets repelled. Robert Monroe, the famous astral traveler, described trying to leave the Earth's orbit in his out-of-body state. He didn't float into an open universe. He reported hitting a barrier. He described it as a mesh, a grid of strange, sticky energy that seemed to catch souls like flies in a spiderweb. He wasn't seeing a spiritual phenomenon. He was likely perceiving the Van Allen belts from a consciousness perspective. Why has humanity never gone beyond the moon? Why, after the Apollo missions, did we suddenly stop? We have iPhones and AI, yet we haven't sent a human being past low Earth orbit in 50 years. Perhaps it's because the managers of the farm realized that physical escape is impossible. The radiation is too intense. The fence is too high. NASA engineer Kelly Smith once admitted in a video about the Orion spacecraft, "We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space." Wait, didn't we solve it in 1969? Or did we just get lucky? The grid is the ultimate quarantine mechanism. It ensures that the infection of humanity, our chaotic, emotional, powerful energy, does not leak out into the rest of the civilized universe. We are in the cosmic isolation ward, but a fence is just a static barrier. To truly control a population, you need an active suppression system. You need a device that constantly broadcasts a signal to keep the inmates sedated, confused, and docile. You need a watchtower, and that watchtower has been staring us in the face every night for our entire lives. Look at the moon. Really look at it. It is the strangest object in the solar system. It is 400 times smaller than the sun and 400 times closer to Earth, creating a mathematically perfect eclipse. The odds of this happening by accident are astronomical. It does not spin. It keeps one face permanently locked toward Earth, tidal locking. We never see the dark side. Isaac Asimov, the famous science fiction writer and professor of biochemistry, famously stated, "The moon is too big to have been captured by the Earth. The chances of such a capture having been effected, and the moon then having taken up nearly circular orbit around our Earth, are too small to make such an eventuality credible." So, if it's not natural, what is it? The soul trap theory suggests a terrifying possibility. The moon is a construct. On November 20, 1969, the Apollo 12 crew jettisoned their lunar module ascent stage, crashing it onto the surface of the moon. The seismometers they left behind recorded something that shocked NASA. The moon rang like a bell. It vibrated for over an hour. To a geologist, this means one thing. It is hollow. Solid rock doesn't ring. A hollow metal sphere rings. If the moon is hollow, who built it? and why is it parked in our orbit? Ancient legends provide a clue. The Zulu people of Africa have a legend that the moon was brought here by two brothers, Wowani and Mpanku. They call it an egg that was hollowed out. Before the moon arrived, the legends say, the earth was different. There were no seasons. The climate was a perpetual mist. Aristotle and Plutarch refer to a group of people called the Proselenes, meaning those who were before the moon. This implies that the moon is a recent addition, a foreign installation. Esoteric researchers like David Icke have proposed the moon matrix theory. This theory suggests that the moon is a frequency emitter. It is broadcasting a specific wave band toward Earth that hacks our perception of reality. It acts like a jammer. This frequency keeps our consciousness trapped in the visible light spectrum, a tiny sliver of reality. It stimulates the reptilian brain, the R complex, keeping us in a state of survival, fear, and aggression. It is the reason we cannot see the Archons standing next to us. The signal from the moon effectively scrambles our third eye. It is the spotlight in the prison yard, blinding us so we can't see the guards in the tower. When you look at the full moon and feel that strange, lunacy-inducing pull, you are feeling the beam of the sentry, so we are surrounded. Above us is the electric fence, Van Allen belts. Watching us is the sentry, the moon. Inside us is the parasite, the ego, Archon. The situation seems hopeless. The cage is perfect, but every cage has a flaw. No matter how advanced the technology, no matter how thick the walls, there is one thing the Archons could not engineer out of the human being. They could not remove the one thing that makes us dangerous. They buried it deep under layers of trauma and amnesia, hoping we would never find it. But it is still there, burning in the center of your being. It is the divine spark, and if you learn how to ignite it, no fence in the universe can hold you. The greatest trick the Archons ever pulled was not convincing us that they didn't exist. It was convincing us that we are weak. Look at the structure of the trap we have just described. They built a frequency fence around the planet. They parked a hollow moon in orbit to broadcast suppression waves. They engineered a reincarnation system to wipe our memories. They spend 24 hours a day bombarding us with fear porn, chemical toxins, and religious guilt. Stop and ask the obvious question. Why? Why go to all this trouble for a hairless ape? If we are just biological accidents, if we are just sinners unworthy of God's love, why do they need a maximum security prison to hold us? You don't build a Fort Knox to guard a pile of dirt. You build it to guard gold. The terrifying truth, the secret that the system is desperate to hide, is that you are the gold. The Gnostics taught that while our bodies were crafted by the Demiurge Yaldabaoth from the mud of the earth, our spirit did not come from here. It was smuggled in. The texts say that Sophia, wisdom, breathed a portion of the true light into the nostrils of Adam. This is the divine spark, epinoia. This spark is not just a soul, it is a fractal of the source. In holographic physics, every piece of a hologram contains the image of the whole. That means you do not just have a piece of God inside you. You are a piece of the prime creator, currently suffering from amnesia. This creates a massive power imbalance, but not the one you think. The Archons are powerful, yes, they are ancient, they are technologically advanced, but they are barren. They are counterfeit spirits. They act like AI programs. They can calculate, they can strategize, and they can copy. But they cannot imagine. They cannot create. They have no internal connection to the infinite energy of the pleroma. They are finite batteries that are constantly running out of juice. You are an infinite generator. This is why they envy us, and this is why they harvest us. They don't just eat our fear, Loosh. They hijack our manifestation ability. Have you ever wondered why the elite tell us their plans before they do them? Why they put their agendas in movies, in books, and on the news? We call it predictive programming. But the esoteric reason is darker. Because they cannot create the future, they need us to create it for them. They plant the seed of an idea, a pandemic, a war, a collapse in our minds. We, the creators, react with fear. We visualize it, we dread it. We pour our emotional energy into it. And by doing so, we use our divine spark to manifest their nightmare into reality. We are the engine. They are just the steering wheel. Understanding this changes the entire dynamic of the soul trap. You are not a victim trapped in a basement. You are a slumbering giant. And the Archons are the little parasites hoping you never wake up. If you realized, truly realized what you are, the cage would dissolve. Because the cage is made of illusion. It holds you only because you agree to be held. It holds you because you believe you are small, guilty, and powerless. Gnosis is not about learning new information. It is about remembering. It is the moment the amnesiac patient looks in the mirror and realizes, wait a minute, I'm not a prisoner, I own this hospital. The Archons are terrified of this moment. They know that one awakened soul, one human who remembers their sovereignty, shines brighter than 1 billion watts of their artificial light. The frequency of an awake human is like a virus to the matrix. It destabilizes the code. So how do we access this spark? It is buried deep under layers of trauma, social conditioning, and the foreign installation, the ego. To find it, we have to go to the one place where the Archon's control is weakest. We have to go to the realm of sleep. If you knew you were going to be thrown into a gladiatorial arena in 10 years, what would you do? Would you ignore it? Would you hope for the best? Or would you train every single day? Death is that arena. And yet most people arrive there completely unprepared. They arrive confused, terrified, and amnesiac. They are easy prey for the Archons because they have never navigated the spirit world before. But here is the secret the system hides. You go to the spirit world every night. We call it sleep. The ancients called sleep the little death. When your physical body shuts down, your consciousness disconnects. It enters the astral plane, the exact same dimension you will enter when you die. The only difference is that during sleep, you are tethered to your body by a silver cord, an energetic link. When you die, the cord is cut. This means that every night you have 8 hours of free training time in the simulator. But what do most humans do? They sleep unconsciously. They drift through random, chaotic dreams like a leaf blowing in the wind. They are passive observers. They are chased by monsters, and they run. They are seduced by figures, and they comply. They are NPCs in their own minds. This is exactly how they will behave when they die. They will drift passively into the light, chasing the projection, following orders. To escape the trap, you must break this habit. You must learn to wake up while you are still sleeping. This is the ancient art of dream yoga, or what modern science calls lucid dreaming. A lucid dream is a state where you are asleep, but your conscious mind comes online. You look around the dreamscape and realize, wait, this isn't real. I am dreaming. The moment you have that realization, the physics of the dream change. You are no longer a victim of the narrative. You become the architect. You can fly. You can walk through walls. You can summon objects. You can look a nightmare monster in the face and make it dissolve. Why is this important? Because the afterlife operates on the exact same physics as a dream. Both realms are thought-responsive dimensions. In the physical world, there is a time lag. If you want a house, you have to buy bricks and build it. In the astral dream world, manifestation is instant. You think house and a house appears. The Archons control us in the afterlife because they are masters of projection. They project a heaven or a hell, and because we believe it is real, we are trapped in it. But if you are a lucid dreamer, if you have spent years practicing the art of realizing you are in a simulation, you will recognize the trick instantly. When the tunnel of light appears, the lucid dreamer says, "I recognize this construct. It is a projection." When the Jesus figure appears, the lucid dreamer says, "Reveal your true form." When the life review starts, the lucid dreamer says, "I do not consent to this narrative." You cannot trick a mind that knows it is dreaming. This is why the Archons try to sabotage your sleep. They attack you with sleep paralysis. Have you ever woken up unable to move, feeling a heavy weight on your chest, sensing a dark, malevolent presence in the room? That is an Archon, or a shadow person, feeding on your fear. They are terrified that you are waking up. They are trying to scare you back into unconsciousness. The Gnostic instruction is clear. Do not fear them. In the astral realm, your will is supreme. They are parasites. You are the host. If you command them to leave with absolute conviction, they must leave. So how do you train? You start with reality checks. Throughout your waking day, stop and ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? Look at your hands. In a dream, hands often look distorted or have extra fingers. If you do this enough in the waking world, your brain will eventually do it in the dream world. The moment you look at your hands in a dream and realize you are free, you have struck the first blow against the empire. You are no longer just a battery. You are a warrior practicing for the final battle, and you will need every ounce of that training. Because when the silver cord finally snaps and you stand at the edge of the void, you won't just be fighting a dream. You will be fighting for the eternal sovereignty of your soul. You need a specific protocol, a set of instructions for the exact moment of death, the escape plan. You are standing on the edge of the cliff. Your physical body is gone. The noise of the world, the traffic, the news, the arguments, has been silenced. In front of you, the void opens up, and in the center of that darkness, the tunnel appears. It is breathtaking. It pulses with golden white light. It sings to you. It pulls at your energetic heartstrings with a force that feels like gravity, but stronger. It feels like home. Every instinct you have, every movie you ever watched, every sermon you ever heard screams one instruction. Go to the light. Don't stay in the dark. Go to the light. This is the final test, and it is a test of willpower against programming. The escape protocol of the Gnostic resistance begins with a command that goes against everything you have been taught. It is a command that requires absolute terrifying courage. When the light opens, do not enter it. Do not speak to the figures inside it. Do not let the feeling of warmth seduce you. Instead, turn around. This sounds simple, but in the state of disembodied consciousness, turning around is not a physical motion. It is a shift of focus. The light is designed to occupy 100% of your attention. It creates a tunnel vision, literally and metaphorically. It blinds you to the rest of the universe. By turning around, You are breaking the hypnotic lock. You are withdrawing your attention from the simulation and looking at what lies behind the curtain. And what do you see when you turn away from the trap? You see the universe, not the fake projected heaven of the Archons. You see the true void, the velvet blackness of deep space, filled with billions of real stars, galaxies, and possibilities. You see the grid. Survivors of NDEs who resisted the pull often report seeing a grid-like structure surrounding the Earth. It looks like a net of electric energy. But they also report seeing holes in the net. The grid is not perfect. It is an aging technology. It has weak spots. The tunnel of light is essentially a vacuum cleaner hose. It is trying to suck you back into the recycling center. But the universe behind you? That is the open ocean. Why are we so afraid to turn around? Because we are conditioned to fear the dark. We are told that darkness equals evil and light equals good. This is binary programming. In physics, black is not evil. Black is the canvas of creation. The womb is dark. The seed grows in the dark. Deep space is dark. The light of the trap is contained, finite, and blinding. The darkness of the void is infinite, silent, and free. By turning your back on the tunnel, you are making a declaration of independence. You are saying, I am not a moth. I am not a battery. I am a sovereign creator. The moment you do this, the dynamics of the afterlife change instantly. The love bomb will stop. The feeling of warmth will vanish, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. The greeters, the fake grandmother, the fake Jesus, will drop the act. Their smiles will fade. They will realize that the seduction has failed. And then they will switch tactics. They will switch from seduction to intimidation. They will try to scare you. They might project images of hellfire. They might scream that you are lost or damned for turning away from God. They might manifest as demons to trigger your fear response. Remember the Gnostic instruction. It is all a projection. They are holographic bullies. They have no power over you unless you give it to them. If you stand your ground, if you float in the void and refuse to engage with their drama, they are powerless. They cannot touch a sovereign soul. You are now in the bardo state, the intermediate zone. You are off the map. You are outside the designated intake valve. You are free. But freedom is disorienting. You are a ship without a compass in an infinite ocean. You need to know how to navigate. You need to know how to use your intention as an engine. Because once you turn away from the light, you have to decide where to go. And to do that, you must remember who you really are. You must issue the declaration of sovereignty. You have turned your back on the light. You have ignored the love bomb. You are floating in the silent velvet darkness of the void. Now, the real confrontation begins. The Archons do not give up their livestock easily. When they realize the sedation has failed, they will drop the benevolent guide mask. The smiling grandmother or the wise angel will vanish. In their place, you may encounter what the Tibetan Book of the Dead calls the wrathful deities. Or perhaps they will appear as cold, geometric intelligences, the true form of the Archons. They will try to block your path. They will use authority. You cannot leave. They will project into your mind. You are broken. You are sinful. You have debts to pay. You belong to the system. This is the moment where most souls crack. We are conditioned from birth to obey authority figures, parents, teachers, police, gods. The instinct to cower before a powerful voice is deeply programmed in our DNA. But you must remember the secret of the trap. They cannot touch you without your consent. Universal law, the law that governs the true pleroma above the matrix, forbids direct violation of free will. They can trick you. They can coerce you. They can lie to you. But they cannot forcefully grab a sovereign soul that stands in its own power. They are not warriors. They are bureaucrats. And like all bureaucrats, they are powerless against someone who knows the law. You must issue the declaration of sovereignty. This is not a prayer. You are not asking for permission to leave. You are informing them that you are leaving. In the ancient Orphic mysteries found in Greece, initiates were buried with gold tablets, lamellae, inscribed with instructions for the afterlife. They were told to say to the guardians, "I am a child of earth and starry heaven, but my race is of heaven alone." This was a password. It was a declaration of lineage. In the modern context, your declaration should be absolute. I revoke all contracts. I revoke all agreements, known and unknown, that I have made with this system. I do not consent to your judgment. I do not consent to your karma. I am a sovereign being of the divine source. You have no power over me. Project this thought with the force of a thunderclap. Use your divine spark. Imagine yourself glowing not with the reflected light of the tunnel, but with an internal nuclear fire. Expand your energy field. Make yourself big. The Archons are parasites. They are small, low-vibration entities. In the face of a fully expanded human spirit, they are repelled. They are like cockroaches when the lights turn on. They might try to argue. But what about your family? Don't you want to see them again? Emotional blackmail. But you left your work unfinished. Guilt. Do not engage in debate. You cannot win a debate with an AI designed to outthink you. Simply repeat, "I do not consent. Step aside." And then, visualize the soul contract, that invisible etheric scroll you signed before you were born. See it in your mind's eye. Burn it. Watch it turn to ash. Watch the chains connecting you to the earth grid shatter. The moment you do this, a shift occurs in the physics of the bardo. The gravity of the earth will stop pulling you. The Archons will recede into the shadows, realizing you are a bad batch that cannot be harvested. They will let you go, not out of kindness, but out of efficiency. They don't want to waste energy fighting a soul that has woken up. They prefer the sleepers. You are now standing in the silence. The tunnel is gone. The earth is a blue marble hanging in the distance below you. The Archons have retreated. You are 100% free. But freedom is terrifying. For the first time in thousands of years, perhaps for the first time in millions of years, you are not following a script. There is no path. There is no guide. There is only the infinite, open universe. Where do you go? How do you find your way back to the true source, the pleroma, if you have forgotten the address? You don't need a GPS. You need to look for a different kind of light. Not the blinding white light of the trap, but the soft, golden light of the midnight sun. You are now in a position that fewer than 0.1% of human souls ever reach. You have died. You have refused the tunnel. You have revoked the contract. You are floating in the bardo, the immense, silent void between dimensions. The earth hangs below you. From this vantage point, stripped of your biological filters, you can finally see it for what it truly is. It is not just a blue marble. It is a server. It is a biodigital harvesting station surrounded by a humming, crackling web of energy. This is the grid. Survivors who have glimpsed this state describe the grid as a dirty, static-filled layer of electricity that wraps around the planet like a net. It is the firmament of the ancients, the Van Allen belts of the scientists. It is the firewall designed to keep the data, you, inside the hard drive. So how do you get out? If you try to fly through it using physical force or soul force driven by fear, you will fail. The grid is designed to catch heavy vibrations. Fear, anger, and desperation act like magnetic hooks. If you are afraid, you will stick to the fence like a fly on flypaper. The secret to bypassing the grid is frequency modulation. You must understand the physics of your own spirit. You are not a solid object. You are a waveform. The grid operates on a specific frequency band, the frequency of the matrix, duality, fear, attachment. To pass through it, you must shift your frequency to a channel that the grid cannot detect. You must become transparent. This is what the alchemists meant by transmuting lead into gold. They weren't talking about metal. They were talking about transmuting the heavy lead of the human ego into the pure gold of the divine spirit. In the void, close your eyes, or the eyes of your astral body. Do not look at the earth. Do not look at the moon. Do not think about your funeral, your bank account, or the people you left behind. Attachment is gravity. Instead, look inward. Ignite the divine spark we discussed in Chapter 10. Visualize it expanding. Feel a sensation of golden silence. Feel the love that comes not from an external God, but from the center of your own being. As you raise your vibration, you become lighter in a literal physics-based sense. You become less dense than the containment field. When you move toward the grid in this state, you won't hit a wall. You will pass right through it, like a radio signal passing through a brick wall. The lower frequency cannot block the higher frequency, and then you are out. You are in deep space, the real universe. The silence here is different. It is not the heavy, oppressive silence of the grave. It is a pregnant, electric silence. It is the silence of infinite potential. You are now standing in the pleroma, the fullness. This is the realm the Gnostics spoke of. It is the universe outside the simulation. There are no Archons here. There is no karma. There is no time. You are surrounded by the true stars, and they look different. They don't look like distant points of cold light. They look like conscious entities. They look like brothers and sisters. But you need a destination. You are a ship that has just broken out of the harbor, but you need a port. Where do you go? The ancient mystery schools taught of a specific exit vector. They called it the midnight sun. This is not a physical sun. It is the black sun, or the invisible sun, of the alchemists. It is the portal back to the source. Unlike the blinding white sedative light of the trap, the midnight sun radiates a golden black light. It feels cool. It feels clear. It does not demand your worship. It offers you expansion. When you look at this light, you don't feel like a child coming home to a parent. You feel like an adult claiming their inheritance. You realize that you are not separate from this light. You are this light. The delusion of separation, the delusion that you were ever human, small, or sinful, evaporates. You remember what you were before the experiment began. You remember that you are a fractal of the infinite. You are free to explore the cosmos. You can create worlds of your own. You can merge with the source. You can exist in a state of pure bliss for 1 billion years. But there is a catch. Even in this state of absolute freedom, there is one final choice to be made. A choice that haunts every bodhisattva, every Buddha, and every escapee who has ever made it over the wall. You look back at the earth. You see the swirling blue prison. You see the grid. And you know that billions of others, your friends, your family, your fellow sparks, are still down there. They are still drinking the water of forgetfulness. They are still being electrocuted. They are still feeding the machine. And you realize that you have the power to help them. But to help them, you have to go back. Not as a prisoner, but as an infiltrator. This is the dilemma of the free soul. You are standing on the precipice of eternity. The grid is behind you. The Archons are a distant, bad memory. The infinite expanse of the pleroma stretches out before you, offering worlds of light and creation that the human mind cannot comprehend. You have won. You have hacked the game. You are free to leave the casino and never look back. But as you turn to walk into the infinite, you feel a tug. Not a tug of gravity, and not a tug of attachment. It is a tug of compassion. You look back at the earth one last time. You see the blue sphere shrouded in the dark, electric web of the grid. You see the billions of sparks trapped inside. Your brothers, your sisters, your friends. You see them crying in hospitals. You see them fighting in wars they don't understand. You see them marching into the tunnel of light, completely unaware that they are walking into a recycling machine. And you realize something terrifying. They cannot get out without help. The system is too efficient. The amnesia is too strong. The fear is too paralyzing. Unless someone from the outside goes back in to wake them up, they will loop in that prison until the end of time. This presents the final dilemma. You have two choices. Choice A, departure. You turn your back on Earth. You merge with the source. You become a creator of new worlds. You exist in a state of pure, uninterrupted bliss forever. This is your right. You earned it. Choice B, infiltration. You voluntarily turn around. You dive back into the grid. You agree to take on a human body again. But this time, you do not sign the soul contract of the Archons. You do not agree to karma. You enter as a saboteur. In Eastern traditions, this is called the Bodhisattva vow, the being who stands at the doorway of nirvana and refuses to enter until every other being has been saved. In the veiled history context, this is a special forces mission, but it is a mission with supreme risk. To enter the matrix, you must wear the biosuit, the body, and the biosuit comes with the brain, and the brain comes with the veiled mechanism. Even if you enter with the highest intention, the density of Earth is so heavy that you might forget who you are. You might get lost in the role. You might become addicted to the drama. You might forget you are an infiltrator and start believing you are a prisoner. And this brings us to the question that has been haunting this entire series. Look at your life right now. Look at the fact that you are watching this video. Look at the fact that you have always felt different, like you didn't belong here, like you were dropped behind enemy lines without a radio. Look at your obsession with the truth. Look at your inability to accept the shallow narratives of society. Why are you here? Are you a prisoner trying to escape? Or are you an infiltrator who volunteered to come back? Perhaps you didn't click on this video by accident. Perhaps this isn't just content. Perhaps this is a wake-up call that you sent to yourself before you dove in. The Archons are terrified of you, not because you are a sinner, but because you are a Trojan horse. You carry the frequency of the pleroma inside your DNA. Just by being here, just by holding your vibration high, you are cracking the walls of the prison. The 70 generations are over. The grid is failing. The Great Awakening is not a political movement. It is a jailbreak. The doors are unlocking. The question is not, will you escape? The question is, now that you remember who you are, How many others will you take with you? The game is ending. The real work begins now. The system relies on silence. It relies on the algorithm to bury the signal so the sleepers remain asleep. If this message found you, and if it resonated with a memory deep inside your DNA, leave a like to boost the frequency. Let's make it impossible for the grid to hide this map. And in the comments below, I want you to answer the final question. Not as a viewer, but as a soul. Do you feel like a prisoner trying to escape, or a volunteer who came back to help? I will be reading your answers. Until we meet again in the void, stay awake.